This is an issue that so many people have been trying to tackle in the last few years. I think back to the work of former Senator Tupac Hunter, who was one of the first voices to look at the current landscape of payday lending and say this is disproportionately impacting low-income families from rural and urban areas. I think back to some of our time working with Bill Sowerby, who was one of the longest advocates for this issue. And now we do have folks who are courageous enough to finally rein in an industry that, regardless of what you will hear, is predatory to individuals in every part of our state. The stories, and I will not speak too long because there are people here who will share their stories. And my only ask to you is to have their voices be the loudest. Not voices of politicians or special interests, but the voices of individuals who have disproportionately been impacted by this system. I was proud to witness in the Senate that this bill passed with bipartisan support, because lifting up people, giving people tools, and lowering barriers for people across the state is not a partisan issue. We saw men and women on both the Republican and Democratic side lift up their voices to say enough. That 370% APR is just predatory, no matter how you slice it. So that was exciting. The stories that I've heard have been from military families who currently enjoy a 36% interest rate. Our country, our society has said that for the men and women who have proudly served our nation, that an interest rate beyond 36% is just unnecessary. This bill would align with that. We've heard from family farmers who have said when their equipment breaks down and they need a short-term loan, they didn't sign up to repay thousands, they expected to pay $600 back. And we know that so many men and women who hurt because of a drought or a bad crop, that they all of a sudden are in a cycle of debt. You will hear from many women, and as we know, women will just make it work to make sure that a auto repair or children's school supplies are actually taken care of. And you'll hear from people who have literally lost their homes because of these types of debt traps. So this just caps it to 36%. We will hear stories that this disproportionately impacts low-income communities, communities of color, and rural areas across our state. 20 other states and the District of Columbia have all reined in this industry by capping the interest rate at 36%. I have modeled this legislation after a bill from Illinois. And we are now years after the bill has passed, and I am pleased to report that the sky didn't fall in Illinois, that there have been nonprofits, CDFIs, other organizations that have stepped up over the course of the last few years and provided tools for people who need short-term loans. You will hear that seedy actors and mob bosses and gangsters will all of a sudden start to threaten people and instill violence on folks because that's the only option that people in Michigan have. It's just a lie. We have data across the country to support the fact that the industry does correct itself. But I don't want you just to take my word for it. Do the national research yourself. We've spoken directly to lawmakers in states that this has passed, and there have been tools and resources that have been enacted. But lastly, I don't just want to speak to you as the senator from Lansing. I want to also speak to you as the Senate Appropriations Chairwoman. I don't want to leave it up to chance that men and women in this state who still need some type of short-term loan product won't have a place to go. So in this year's budget cycle, we are fighting for additional resources to give an off-ramp to families, to make sure that we are not overcorrecting the industry, but rather providing resources to instill an off-ramp for people so that those short-term loan products will be able to continue for people who need it. That is my commitment to you all as someone who's leading the budget negotiations. And I just strongly, again, urge you to listen to the voice of your constituents beyond any special interests that, again, have enjoyed lots of revenue, but on the backs of our residents in the state of Michigan. So thank you, Madam Chair.